They say Omegas are weak, meant to serve, born to submit. But Cassia had learned the most dangerous Omegas are the ones who refuse to kneel, the ones who vanish into forests where even alphas fear to tread, raising secrets and shadows that could shatter kingdoms. 7 years. 2,555 sunrises in a cabin so deep in the thornwood that even hunters' maps marked it as cursed ground. Cassia stood at her wooden basin, hands submerged in icy water drawn from the creek that morning, scrubbing dirt from wild carrots with the same methodical precision she applied to everything in this hidden life. Behind her, the fire crackled, and small feet pattered across the worn floorboards. "Mama, look!" She turned to see Brennan, 6 years old with eyes too ancient for his small face, holding up a pinecone like it was treasure. His dark hair fell in unruly waves around features that shifted between heartbreakingly beautiful and unsettlingly sharp, depending on the light. Most striking were his eyes, one silver blue like winter ice, the other gold amber like autumn leaves. Heterochromia, the healers would have called it. But Cassia knew better. She knew what those mismatched eyes truly meant. "Beautiful little ember," she said softly, kneeling to his level. "Where did you find it?" "By the old oak. The one with the face in the bark." His voice held that strange double quality it sometimes carried, like two people speaking in harmony. "It was waiting for me." Cassia's heart clenched. Waiting for him. Objects didn't wait for normal children. But Brennan had never been normal, not from the moment she'd found him 7 years ago, a newborn screaming in the ruins of the Black Maw massacre, surrounded by bodies of both packs, the sole survivor of a slaughter that had ended a generations-long war. She should have left him there. Any sensible Omega would have. But when she'd lifted that blood-covered infant, and those mismatched eyes had locked onto hers, something fundamental had shifted in her soul. In that moment, she'd stopped being Cassia Greywater, the failed Omega who couldn't bear children, exiled from the Riverbend pack for her defect. She'd become something new, mother to a child who should not exist. The cabin creaked in the wind, and Cassia stood, returning to her vegetables. Their life here followed strict rhythms. Wake before dawn, tend the garden, forage in the safe zones she'd mapped over years, avoid the old roads where travelers might pass, teach Brennan to read using her 3 precious books salvaged from her old life, and above all, keep him hidden from the world that would destroy him if they knew what he was. Because Brennan wasn't just a war orphan, he was a convergence, a child born when 2 Alpha Bloodline's sworn enemies had somehow produced offspring together. The Blackmaw and Iron Ridge packs had been slaughtering each other for 3 generations over territory and old betrayals. The idea that their alphas had created a child was impossible. Forbidden. Against every law of pack dynamics, convergence children were myths. Cautionary tales told to young wolves about what happened when the natural order broke. They were said to carry the strength of both bloodlines, the madness of neither belonging, and power that could unite packs or destroy them entirely. Which is exactly why every pack law, every alpha decree, every ancient code demanded the same thing: convergence children must be killed on sight. Cassia had spent 7 years keeping Brennan safe from that fate, hidden in woods so tangled with old magic that most wolves' instincts screamed at them to turn back. She'd traded her pack, her home, her very identity for his survival, and she'd do it again without hesitation. The signs began 3 days before everything changed. First, the birds went silent. The forest that usually sang with life from dawn until dusk held its breath, as if the trees themselves sensed something coming. Cassia noticed immediately 7 years of hypervigilance had made her attuned to every shift in their isolated world. Second, Brennan's eyes began flickering. The heterochromia that marked him as convergence would sometimes pulse, one eye brightening while the other dimmed, like twin moons in different phases. It happened when he slept now, his small body twitching with dreams he couldn't articulate, whimpering words in a language that predated the modern packs. Third, and most alarming, the boundary markers were failing. Cassia discovered it on her morning patrol, a ritual she performed every day before Brennan woke. The carved sigils she'd placed in a protective circle around their cabin, old Omega magic her grandmother had taught her, dismissed by alphas as superstition but powerful in its own subtle way, were darkening, as if something was draining them. She stood before one ancient oak, running her fingers over the symbols cut into its bark, and felt cold, dread pool in her stomach. Something was coming. Something strong enough to push through protections that had held for 7 years. "Cassia Greywater." The voice came from behind her, deep and resonant, carrying the weight of absolute authority. She spun, heart hammering, every instinct screaming at her to run, to fight, to protect. But she froze instead, because standing 20 paces away, flanked by 4 armed guards, was a man who could only be one person. King Aldrich Stormborn, Alpha of Alphas, ruler of the United Packs. The wolf who had somehow ended the centuries of pack warfare 5 years ago and forged 7 feuding territories into one kingdom. She'd never seen him in person. Exiled Omegas didn't attend royal courts, but his reputation preceded him like thunder before lightning. He was tall, impossibly so, with shoulders that seemed carved from mountain stone. His hair was dark as midnight, touched with silver at the temples despite him being perhaps 35 years old. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath, pure silver, like molten moonlight, holding an intelligence that felt ancient and knowing. Those silver eyes studied her with unnerving focus, and she realized with horror that he could probably smell her fear, read it in her elevated heartbeat, see it in the way her hands trembled. "Your Majesty," she managed, dropping into a bow that every Omega learned from childhood, even though she'd abandoned pack hierarchy years ago. "You honor my humble home." "Do I?" His tone was neutral, unreadable. He took a step forward, and his guards moved with him in perfect synchronization. "I wonder if you'll still think so when you hear why I've come." Cassia's mind raced. How had he found them? The Thornwood was vast, unmapped. Their cabin existed in a pocket of space most wolves couldn't even sense. "Unless, the child," Aldrich said simply, and her world tilted. "I've come for the child, Cassia, the Convergence child you've been hiding in these woods for 7 years. The child born of Blackmaw and Ironridge blood, whose very existence violates every sacred law of our kind." Her mouth went dry. "I don't know what you mean, Your Majesty. I live alone here. Just an exiled Omega trying to survive." His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those silver eyes. Disappointment, perhaps. Or was it respect for her attempt to lie? "Mama?" The small voice shattered the moment like dropped glass. Cassia's heart stopped as Brennan emerged from the tree line, clutching his pine cone, those impossible mismatched eyes going wide as they fixed on the strangers. The guards' hands went immediately to their weapons. Aldrich raised one hand, stilling them, but his gaze never left Brennan. She watched the Alpha King's face as he took in the heterochromia, the double-toned quality to the child's presence, the way the very air seemed to shimmer around him. "Extraordinary," Aldrich breathed. Then his eyes shifted back to Cassia, and for the first time, she heard emotion in his voice. "We need to talk. Now." Cassia's instincts screamed at her to grab Brennan and run, to shift and disappear into the forest's depths where even a king couldn't follow. But Aldrich's guards had positioned themselves strategically, cutting off escape routes with the precision of soldiers who'd done this many times before. She was trapped. "Brennan, go inside," she said, keeping her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. "But Mama..." Now. The command came out sharper than intended, and she watched him flinch. Guilt stabbed through her fear, but his safety mattered more than his feelings. Brennan's mismatched eyes shimmered with confused tears as he clutched his pine cone and retreated into the cabin. The moment the door closed, Cassia turned to face Aldrich fully. "If you've come to execute him, you'll have to kill me first." "Execute?" Aldrich's eyebrows rose. "Is that what you think I'm here for?" "Every law demands it. Convergence children are abominations, threats to pack stability, genetic impossibilities that must be eliminated." She recited the doctrine bitterly, words she'd heard 1,000 times before her exile. "You're the Alpha King. You enforce the laws. I also make them." He gestured to his guards. "Leave us. Patrol the perimeter." The guards exchanged uncertain glances, but they obeyed, melting into the forest until Cassia and Aldrich stood alone in the small clearing. Without his soldiers, he seemed somehow larger, his presence filling the space like a physical force. "How did you find us?" she asked quietly. 3 months ago, a merchant traveling the old roads reported seeing lights in the Thornwood, where no lights should exist. 2 months ago, hunters found animal kills that showed signs of unusual strength, deer brought down by something small but incredibly powerful. 1 month ago, a passing scout reported hearing a child's laughter from the cursed forest. He took a step closer. "But I knew about the child long before that. I've known since the night of the Blackmaw massacre." Her blood turned to ice. "That's impossible." "Is it?" His silver eyes held hers. I was there, Cassia, leading the peacekeeping force that arrived too late to stop the slaughter. I saw the ruins, counted the bodies, and I saw the tracks. Small Omega feet approaching the carnage, then leaving, deeper impressions on the exit carrying extra weight. A newborn's weight. You've known for 7 years and did nothing? Her voice shook with disbelief. I did what I had to do. I let you take him. Let you hide him. Because sometimes mercy requires patience. He paused, and something complicated crossed his features. And because I needed time to prepare the kingdom for what he represents. What he represents? He's a child, not a symbol. He's both. Aldrich's voice hardened with certainty. He's the biological proof that the old hatreds between Blackmaw and Iron Ridge were surmountable. That 2 alpha bloodlines could create life instead of just taking it. Do you understand what that means? Before she could answer, a sharp crack echoed through the forest. Both their heads snapped toward the sound. Another crack. Then another systematic, deliberate. Someone was breaking her boundary markers. Your guards? She asked urgently. They wouldn't. His body tensed, and she saw his wolf rise to the surface, silver bleeding into his eyes until they glowed. Someone else found you. The cabin door burst open, and Brennan stumbled out, his small face contorted with pain. Mama, it hurts! His mismatched eyes were blazing now, pulsing with light. Something's coming, something angry. Cassia ran to him, pulling him against her chest. She could feel it now too, a presence pushing against the forest, malevolent and hungry. Her remaining boundary markers flared and died, one by one, their protection crumbling. Then they emerged from the trees. 5 wolves, larger than normal, their eyes burning with an unnatural red glow. Their fur was matted and stank of decay. At their center walked a figure in tattered robes, face hidden behind a bone mask carved with ancient symbols. Rogue pack, Aldrich growled, moving to stand between the intruders and Cassia, led by a corrupted shaman. The masked figure raised one gnarled hand, and when they spoke, their voice echoed with multiple tones, like many speaking as one. The Convergence Child. We have tracked its scent across 7 years. Hand it over, King, and we will grant you mercy. Nothing about you suggests mercy, Aldrich said coldly. The shaman laughed, the sound like breaking bones. We will take the child and consume its power. The strength of both bloodlines, distilled into one vessel. Imagine what we could become. Cassia felt Brennan trembling against her, and she realized with horror that his skin was growing hot, almost feverish. His eyes pulsed, faster, brighter. Mama, I can't hold it, he whimpered. It wants out. Hold what, baby? But even as she asked, she felt its power radiating from him in waves, making the air shimmer. Aldrich's head turned slightly toward them, and she saw understanding flash across his face. His convergence is activating. The threat is triggering his defensive instincts. He raised his voice to the shaman. Leave now, and I'll grant you your lives. You cannot command us, false king. We obey only the old ways, and the old ways demand sacrifice. The corrupted wolves lunged simultaneously. Everything happened in heartbeats. Aldrich shifted mid-motion, his human form exploding into a massive wolf that dwarfed even the corrupted rogues. His fur shone silver black, and when he roared, the sound carried such alpha dominance that 2 of the attacking wolves actually faltered mid-leap. But the other 3 kept coming, driven by whatever dark magic the shaman wielded. They bypassed Aldrich entirely, vectoring straight for Cassia and Brennan. She had no choice. She shifted too. Her Omega wolf smaller, russet-furred, built for speed rather than power. She grabbed Brennan by the back of his shirt with her teeth and ran, her paws barely touching ground as she fled toward the cabin. Behind her, she heard snarls and tearing flesh as Aldrich engaged the rogues. She made it to the cabin's threshold when pain exploded across her hindquarters. Claws raked through fur and flesh, sending her tumbling. Brennan rolled from her grip, hitting the cabin wall with a sickening thud. No! The word came out human, as she forced a partial shift, standing on 2 legs with her wolf, still partially manifested a painful, unstable state that Omegas could barely maintain. But she needed hands to defend him, needed her human mind to think. The corrupted wolf that had struck her advanced slowly, red eyes fixed on Brennan's prone form. Saliva dripped from its jaws, hissing where it hit the ground. Close. She could see the wrongness, its flesh was rotting beneath the fur, held together by unnatural magic. Stay away from him. She threw herself between them, claws extended, knowing it was hopeless. Omegas couldn't match alphas in combat. She would die here, and then Brennan would be taken, consumed, destroyed. The wolf lunged. Light exploded. Brennan screamed, and the sound wasn't human, wasn't wolf, it was something else entirely. His mismatched eyes blazed like twin suns as power erupted from his small body in concentric waves. The attacking wolf was thrown backward, hitting a tree with such force that the trunk cracked. The other corrupted wolves, still engaged with Aldrich, suddenly froze, their bodies seizing as if caught in invisible chains. The shaman's voice rose in a chant, trying to counter whatever Brennan had unleashed. But the child wasn't done. He stood now, and his shadow stretched wrong, splitting into two distinct shapes, one dark as night, one bright as dawn. The Black Maw shadow and the Iron Ridge shadow, ancient bloodline essences manifesting through their convergence air. Impossible, the shaman gasped, their voice losing its multiple tones, becoming simply afraid. He's awakened already. Too young. Too untrained. This cannot. Aldrich, back in human form and covered in blood, not all of it, his moved with lethal speed. He was suddenly beside the shaman, one hand gripping their throat. You came here threatening a child under my protection. You attacked an Omega who asked only to be left in peace. And worst of all, you serve the old darkness that I spent 5 years purging from these lands. The old darkness never died, the shaman choked out. It merely waited, and now it will return, because you've let the convergence live. He is the key, the prophesied one who will either unite all wolves or destroy them utterly. Then I choose unity. Aldrich's voice held absolute certainty. He looked at his guards, who had returned at the sound of battle. Take them. All of them. They'll stand trial in the capital. As the guards secured the shaman and the surviving corrupted wolves, Cassia crawled to Brennan. The light had faded from his eyes, and he collapsed into her arms, unconscious but breathing. She held him close, checking for injuries, her healer instincts overriding her terror. Is he hurt? Aldrich asked, kneeling beside them. Up close, she could see the concern in his silver eyes, genuine and deep. Exhausted. Whatever he did, it drained him. She looked up at the Alpha King, this stranger who'd known about her son for 7 years and done nothing. Why? Why let us hide? Why come now? And why protect us from them? Aldrich was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. 7 years ago, I inherited a kingdom drowning in blood. Pack killed pack over grudges, so old no one remembered their origins. I needed a symbol, something to prove that peace was possible. But symbols only work if people believe in them. So you're here to take him. Make him your symbol. Parade him in front of the packs as proof that old enemies can unite. Bitterness dripped from every word. He's a child, Aldrich, not a political tool. You're right. His agreement surprised her. He is a child who just manifested convergence power at age 6, when most don't show it until adolescence. A child who, as that shaman said, is prophesied to either unite or destroy our kind. He met her eyes. A child who will never be safe hidden in these woods, because now they know where he is. The rogues, the old darkness, every wolf who fears change or craves power, they'll all come for him. And next time, I might not arrive in time. She wanted to argue, to insist she could protect Brennan alone as she had for 7 years. But the words died in her throat. Because he was right. The boundary markers were broken, their location was compromised, and Brennan's power had just announced itself like a beacon to every sensitive wolf within 100 miles. What are you proposing? She asked quietly. Come to the capital. Both of you. You'll have quarters in the palace, protection from my personal guard, and access to trainers who can teach Brennan to control his convergence powers before they tear him apart. He paused. And Cassia, you'll have something you haven't had in 7 years, a community. Pack. I was exiled. I have no pack. Then join mine. The offer hung in the air between them, weighted with implications she didn't have time to unpack. I, Aldrich Stormborn, Alpha of Alphas, offer sanctuary to Cassia Greywater and the child Brennan. None may harm them without answering to me. The formal words of pack acceptance, once spoken, They were binding by every law their kind held sacred. She stared at this man who'd turned her world upside down in less than an hour, trying to read his true intentions. Brennan stirred in her arms, his mismatched eyes opening slightly. "Mama, is the angry thing gone?" "Yes, little Ember, it's gone." She kissed his forehead, then looked back at Aldrich. "If I agree, what guarantees do I have that he won't be used, exploited, or hurt? My word is Alpha King. And..." He hesitated, then continued. "And my word is someone who understands what it means to be different, to carry power that others fear." There was a story there, she realized, something in his past that made him sympathetic rather than threatened by Brennan's existence. But that would have to wait. She thought of 7 years in isolation, 7 years of fear, of looking over her shoulder, of teaching Brennan to hide what he was, 7 years of knowing that one day someone would find them, and she wouldn't be strong enough to protect him. That day had come. "We'll go with you," she said finally. "But if anyone tries to hurt him, king or commoner, I will end them, Omega or not." Aldrich's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "I would expect nothing less from a mother protecting her child." As they prepared to leave, Cassia took one last look at the cabin that had been their home, their sanctuary, their entire world. Brennan clutched his pine cone like a talisman, his eyes already drooping with exhaustion again. She'd spent 7 years hiding from the world. Now, ready or not, they were walking straight into its center. The journey to the capital took 3 days, though it should have taken 5. Aldrich set a brutal pace, his urgency making clear that he considered them still in danger. Cassia rode on horseback with Brennan nestled against her chest, the child sleeping more than waking as his body recovered from the power expenditure. The Alpha King's entourage moved like a military operation, scouts ranging ahead, guards in rotating positions, never the same formation twice. Cassia recognized the pattern. They expected attack. On the second night, camped in a fortified clearing, she finally got answers. "There's something you need to understand about what we're facing," Aldrich said, sitting across from her at the fire while Brennan slept in a protected tent behind them. "The shaman you encountered wasn't acting alone. They're part of something called the Covenant of the First Moon." The name meant nothing to her, but his expression said it should. "What is that?" "An extremist faction that believes we've strayed too far from the old ways. They reject the unified kingdom, reject peace between packs, and most importantly, they reject the idea that wolves can evolve beyond their ancient blood feuds." He poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling. "They've been operating in the shadows since I took the throne, sabotaging peace efforts, assassinating key figures who support unity. And they want Brennan because the prophecy about convergence children goes both ways. He could unite our kind or tear it apart from within. The Covenant wants to ensure it's the latter. They plan to corrupt him, twist his power, and use him as a weapon to destroy everything I've built." Cassia felt cold, despite the fire's heat. How would they corrupt him? Ancient rituals. Blood magic. The same dark practices that created those corrupted wolves you saw. His silver eyes met hers in the firelight. "They believe that if they can bond Brennan to their cause before his convergence fully manifests, they can shape what he becomes, turn him into their perfect destroyer. That's why you couldn't just leave us in the woods anymore." Understanding clicked into place. The attack wasn't random. It was a test. They wanted to see if the rumors were true, if a convergence child really existed. And now they know. Aldrich's jaw tightened. "Which means they'll come with everything they have. Not just rogues and corrupted shamans, but infiltrators, spies, possibly even wolves within my own court who secretly serve their cause." A new fear seized her. "How can you trust anyone? If they've infiltrated your court?" "I can't. Not entirely." He looked away, and for the first time, she saw the weight he carried. An Alpha King who couldn't fully trust his own pack. "But I have a few wolves I'd stake my life on, and I have advantages the Covenant doesn't know about." "Like what?" He was quiet for a long moment, then reached into his shirt and pulled out a pendant on a leather cord. It was a small stone, perfectly round, that seemed to shimmer between silver and gold. "Do you know what this is?" Cassia leaned closer, and her breath caught. She'd seen something like it once, in a book her grandmother had shown her. "That's a lunar stone. They were supposed to be extinct, destroyed during the purge of the Moon Blessed." "Most were. This is one of 3 that survived. His fingers closed around it. It allows me to sense corrupted magic within a certain radius. That's how I knew the shaman was using dark practices. It's how I've been rooting out Covenant members for years. But you still can't find them all. No. They're too careful. Too patient. He tucked the stone away. Which is why I need to keep Brennan close. If I can protect him until his convergence fully manifests and he learns to control it, he becomes too powerful for them to corrupt. The window of vulnerability is narrow, maybe 2 or 3 years. 2 or 3 years of constant vigilance. Of never knowing who might be an enemy. Of watching her son become a target for forces she barely understood. There's something else you should know, Aldrich continued. The Covenant has a secret weapon, an Omega they call the Whisperer. Cassia's blood chilled at the word. What does that mean? Exactly what it sounds like. An Omega with the ability to influence thoughts, plant suggestions, manipulate emotions. They're one of the moon-blessed wolves, born with supernatural gifts beyond normal wolf abilities. The Covenant has been using the Whisperer to turn wolves against the United Kingdom, to sow discord and doubt. An Omega working with them willingly? She couldn't keep the disgust from her voice. Omegas were supposed to be nurturers, healers, peacekeepers. Willingly or not, I can't say. The moon-blessed are rare, and their powers make them valuable. The Covenant might be controlling them somehow. He looked at her intently. But you see why I'm telling you this. When we reach the capital, you need to be careful who you trust. The Whisperer could be anyone. They could make you believe things that aren't true, feel loyalties that serve their agenda. How do you defend against that? The lunar stone helps, but it's not perfect. Mostly, you trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, if someone's behavior seems off, if you find yourself suddenly doubting things you were certain about, tell me immediately. Cassia processed this information, each piece adding weight to her growing dread. They weren't just walking into a palace. They were walking into a war zone, where the enemies wore friendly faces and the weapons were invisible. Why are you doing this? She asked suddenly. You could have left us in the woods. Let the Covenant waste resources searching. Instead, you're painting a target on your own back by bringing us into your home. Why? Aldrich was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he said. Because I know what it's like to be different. To have power that others fear rather than respect. To wonder if you're a blessing or a curse. Your eyes, she realized. They're silver. Not the normal gold of alpha wolves. You're moon-blessed too. Was? My gift manifested when I was 12, the ability to sense truth from lies. It helped me survive the political machinations that killed my father. But it also made me realize how many lies hold our society together, how much of pack hierarchy is built on deception. His expression was distant. I used that knowledge to end the pack wars, but it cost me. I can never fully trust what people say, only what they intend. It's a lonely way to rule. Understanding bloomed. So you see yourself in Brennan, another moon-blessed child who'll be used or feared. I see a chance to do better than those who raised me, to give him a choice about what he becomes. He looked back at her, and I see a mother who gave up everything to protect her child. That kind of love is rare, Cassia. Worth protecting. Before she could respond, a guard approached the fire. Your Majesty, the scouts report movement in the northern quadrant. Could be nothing, could be... I'll check it myself. Aldrich rose smoothly. To Cassia. Stay with Brennan. Don't leave the tent circle. He disappeared into the darkness with the guard, leaving her alone with the crackling fire and her racing thoughts. She checked on Brennan, finding him still deeply asleep, his mismatched eyes moving beneath closed lids as he dreamed. She brushed hair from his forehead, her heart aching with protective fury. He was so small, so innocent. He didn't deserve to be a prophesied weapon, or a symbol, or a target. I won't let them take you, she whispered. I don't care what prophecies say or what powers you have. You're my son, and I will burn down anyone who tries to use you. A sound made her turn sharply. A figure stood at the edge of the firelight, a woman, small and unassuming, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Forgive me, the woman said softly. I'm Morel, one of the camp healers. I brought herbs for the child, in case he wakes with nightmares. The power expenditure often causes troubled sleep. Something about her felt off, but Cassia couldn't pinpoint what. The woman's posture was submissive, properly Omega. Her scent carried nothing threatening, yet. That's thoughtful, Cassia said carefully, not moving closer. You can leave them by the fire. Morel took a step forward, and Cassia's instincts screamed. Actually, it would be better if I showed you how to prepare them. It's quite particular, and, no. The word came out harder than intended. Leave them and go. The kind expression didn't change, but something flickered in those gentle eyes. Something cold. Of course. How silly of me. I wouldn't want to intrude on a mother's time with her child. She set a small pouch by the fire and retreated into the darkness. Cassia's heart pounded. Had that been the whisperer? Or was she being paranoid, seeing threats in every shadow? When Aldrich returned minutes later, she told him about the encounter. His expression darkened. We have no healer named Morel in this company. He immediately called for his guards, but they found nothing. No trace of the woman. No extra scent trails. Nothing. The herb pouch, when examined, contained wolfsbane mixed with sleeping powder. Enough to kill a child Brennan's size. They're already here, Aldrich said grimly, staring at the pouch. And they're closer than I thought. That night, Cassia didn't sleep. She held Brennan close and watched the shadows, wondering which darkness would strike next. They reached the capital at sunset on the third day, and Cassia's breath caught at her first glimpse of Silver Peak City. Built into the mountainside in terraced levels, the city gleamed with white stone that reflected the dying light like captured moonbeams. At its peak stood the palace, a sprawling complex of towers and walls that seemed to grow from the mountain itself. Banners bearing Aldrich's sigil, a silver wolf beneath crossed moons, flew from every tower. But what struck her most was the diversity. As their entourage passed through the city gates, she saw wolves of every pack, mingling freely. Blackmaw and Iron Ridge, ancient enemies, standing side by side in market stalls. Smaller packs she'd never heard of mixing with the larger ones. Omegas walking without fear, betas engaging in trade, alphas of different bloodlines, sharing drinks at street-side taverns. This was Aldrich's achievement. 7 packs that had been slaughtering each other for generations, now living as one. It's beautiful, she whispered. Beside her on horseback, Aldrich's expression softened. It's fragile. One wrong move, one political failure, and old hatreds could reignite like wildfire. His eyes scanned the crowds with constant vigilance. That's why Brennan matters so much. He's living proof that the old divisions can be overcome. Brennan, finally awake and alert, stared wide-eyed at everything. Mama, why are there so many people? Because they've learned to live together, little Ember. She hugged him tighter. Different packs, one city. They climbed through the city levels, each one more impressive than the last, until they reached the palace gates. Guards in polished armor snapped to attention as Aldrich approached, and the massive iron gates swung open. Inside, the palace was chaos. A woman in elegant robes rushed forward, her gray-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun. Your Majesty, thank the moon you're back. The council has been in an uproar. Lord Fenric is demanding answers about your sudden departure, and Lady Vara claims. She stopped abruptly, her eyes landing on Cassia and Brennan. Who are they? My guests, Counselor Thea. Aldrich's tone brooked no argument. Prepare rooms in the royal wing. They're to have full protection. Thea's eyes narrowed as she studied Brennan, and Cassia saw the exact moment recognition sparked. Your Majesty, is that? A discussion for the council chamber, later. He dismounted smoothly. For now, they need rest and food. See to it. More figures emerged from the palace, nobles in fine clothing, servants in livery, guards taking position, all eyes fixed on the newcomers, and Cassia felt the weight of their scrutiny like physical pressure. A tall man with a scarred face pushed forward. Aldrich, the rumors are already spreading. They're saying you found a convergence child. The council needs answers before panic sets in. Then call an emergency session for tonight, Lord Fenric. Aldrich's voice carried the alpha command that made even the scarred lord step back. But first, allow me to see my guests settled. He led them personally through corridors that seemed designed to confuse, past tapestries depicting ancient pack histories, through halls where servants stopped to stare. Cassia kept Brennan close, feeling increasingly like prey surrounded by predators. They reached a suite of rooms, in what Thea had called the royal wing chambers, with more space than their entire cabin, furnished with luxury Cassia had almost forgotten existed. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and a private bathing room connected to the bedroom. "This is too much," she protested. "This is necessary." Aldrich checked the room systematically, examining locks and windows with a warrior's eye. "The royal wing is the most secure area of the palace. My rooms are 3 doors down. Guards will be posted outside at all times, rotation every 4 hours, so they stay sharp." "How long will we be here?" "As long as it takes." He turned to face her fully. "Tonight, I present you both to the council. They need to see Brennan with their own eyes, understand what he represents. Some will be hostile, many will be afraid, but I need their support to provide proper protection." "You're asking me to put him on display?" Anger flared hot in her chest, like some exotic creature in a menagerie. "I'm asking you to trust me." His silver eyes held hers with intensity. "I know how it looks, but the alternative is letting rumors fester until they become something worse. Better to control the narrative than let it control us." Brennan tugged on her sleeve. "Mama, I'm hungry." The simple need cut through the tension. Aldrich's expression softened immediately. "Of course. I'll have food brought up." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Cassia, at the council meeting tonight, there will be questions. Personal questions about where he came from, how you found him. Are you prepared for that?" "Are you asking if I'll lie?" "I'm asking if you're ready to tell a truth that will change how people see you. An Omega who saved a Convergence child isn't just compassionate, she's dangerous to those who want the old ways preserved." She looked at Brennan, who was already exploring the room with childish wonder, touching velvet curtains and testing the softness of the bed. 7 years, she'd kept him hidden. 7 years of being no one, invisible, safe. That safety was gone. All that remained was the choice of how to be seen. "I'll tell the truth," she said firmly. "Let them judge me however they want." The council chamber was a circular room with a domed ceiling painted to resemble the night sky. 12 seats arranged in a semicircle faced a raised platform where Aldrich's throne Saturday. When Cassia entered with Brennan clinging to her hand, every face turned toward them with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Counselor Thea sat to the left of the throne, her intelligent eyes missing nothing. Lord Fenric occupied the seat directly across from Aldrich, his scarred face set in grim lines. Others she didn't recognize filled the remaining positions, representatives of the 7 unified packs, each one a power player in this new kingdom. "The council recognizes Cassia Greywater and the child under discussion," Thea announced formally. "They stand before us by the Alpha King's invitation." "Not invitation," a woman's voice rang out, cold and sharp. "Command. We weren't consulted before His Majesty dragged a Convergence child into our city." The speaker was striking, dark-skinned with amber eyes and hair shaved on one side. "I am Lady Vera of the Iron Ridge Pack, and I want to know why we're harboring an abomination that should have been destroyed at birth." Brennan pressed against Cassia's legs, and she felt him trembling. She wanted to cover his ears, to shield him from the hatred. But this was the reality they now faced. "He's not an abomination," she said, keeping her voice steady. "He's a child. A child born from Black Maw and Iron Ridge blood." Vera spat. "A genetic impossibility that violates everything we know about pack bloodlines. An impossibility that exists nonetheless." Aldrich's voice cut through the rising murmurs. "Brennan is real, he's here, and the Covenant of the First Moon will stop at nothing to claim or destroy him. The question isn't whether we accept his existence, it's whether we protect him or abandon him to our enemies." Lord Fenric leaned forward. "Your Majesty, no one disputes the threat the Covenant poses. But bringing the child here makes Silver Peak a target. You've endangered the entire city for one Omega and her foundling." "Her foundling?" Thea's eyebrows rose. "Is that what you're calling the prophesied child? The one who could either unite or destroy all wolfkind?" "Prophecies are superstition," another council member muttered. "Are they?" Aldrich gestured to Brennan. "Show them, child. Show them what you did 3 days ago." Brennan looked up at Cassia with frightened eyes. She wanted to refuse, to spare him this trial, But she saw the calculation in Aldrich's strategy. Words could be dismissed, but power couldn't. She knelt beside her son. "It's okay, little Ember. Just like in the forest. Just a little." He nodded uncertainly, closed his mismatched eyes, and concentrated. The air began to shimmer around him. His shadows split and reformed, one dark as midnight, one bright as dawn. The temperature in the room dropped, then spiked. Frost formed on one half of the council table, while the other half grew warm enough that papers began to curl. The council members recoiled, several standing, hands going to weapons that weren't there. "Enough," Aldrich said gently, and Brennan immediately stopped, collapsing against Cassia with exhaustion. The silence that followed was deafening. "That," Aldrich said quietly, "is what the Covenant wants to corrupt and control. That power, at age 6, barely trained and completely raw. Imagine what he'll be capable of when fully grown." He let that sink in. Now imagine that power in the Covenant's hands, twisted by dark magic, aimed at this city, at this kingdom, at everything we've built. Or, Lady Vera said slowly, her hostility tempered with something like fear, imagine that power turned against us anyway. You said yourself he could destroy us. Why take that risk? Because the alternative is worse. Cassia spoke before she could second-guess herself. Every eye turned to her. "You want to know why I saved him? Because I found him alone in the ruins, crying, covered in the blood of wolves who died for stupid reasons. Because I was exiled from my pack for being defective, for not being able to bear children. And suddenly here was this child who needed me." Her voice grew stronger. "You all sit here debating whether he's worth saving while ignoring what he represents. His very existence proves that pack bloodlines aren't as rigid as you believed. That old hatreds can be overcome. That maybe, just maybe, you've been killing each other for generations over distinctions that don't actually matter." "Careful, Omega," Fenric warned. "You're treading on dangerous ground." "I've been on dangerous ground for 7 years." She met his gaze without flinching. "But I kept him alive. Kept him safe, taught him to be kind, despite the cruelty he'd been born into. And I'll keep doing it, with or without your approval." "Fortunately," Aldrich interjected smoothly, "you have my approval, which supersedes the council's, but I would prefer their cooperation." He addressed the assembly. "I'm not asking you to love the child. I'm asking you to recognize the strategic reality. The Covenant is coming. They want Brennan, and they'll tear through anyone in their path to get him. So we can either stand together and protect him, or we can fragment and fall." Thea stood. "The Alpha King makes a compelling argument. I move that we grant the child sanctuary and provide protection resources." "Seconded," another council member said reluctantly. The debate stretched on for another hour, but the tide had turned. In the end, 7 of the 12 council members voted in favor of sanctuary, with conditions. Brennan would be monitored, his training supervised, his movements restricted. As they left the chamber, Cassia felt Brennan's hand slip into hers. "Mama, they don't like me." "Some don't," she admitted, leading him through the palace corridors back to their suite. "But some do. And the ones who don't, they're just afraid of what they don't understand." Back in their rooms, after Brennan finally fell asleep in the massive bed, Cassia stood at the window overlooking the city. The lights below twinkled like stars, and she realized with a start that for the first time in 7 years, she felt something other than fear. She felt anger, righteous, burning anger at a world that would look at a 6-year-old child and see only a threat, at prophecies and politics and pack hierarchies that valued power over compassion. "You did well tonight." Aldrich's voice came from the doorway. She hadn't heard him enter. "Did I? I basically called the council ignorant to their faces. You told them the truth. That's rarer than you'd think in this palace." He moved to stand beside her at the window. "The vote could have gone either way. Your words tipped the balance. For now, but I could feel their fear. It's only a matter of time before someone decides he's too dangerous to live. Then we make sure he becomes too valuable to kill." Aldrich's reflection in the window was serious. Starting tomorrow, his training begins. Not just control of his convergence powers, but etiquette, politics, diplomacy. If he's going to survive in this world, he needs to be more than powerful. He needs to be indispensable. Cassia turned to face him directly. You're asking me to turn my son into a political tool after all. I'm asking you to give him the skills to protect himself when I'm not there. When you're not there. His voice was raw. Because the greatest threat to Brennan isn't the Covenant, Cassia. It's what he might become if we fail to guide him properly. That power you saw tonight? That's nothing compared to what he'll wield at full maturity. If he's not taught control, taught purpose, taught compassion, the prophecy about him destroying our kind might fulfill itself. The weight of that responsibility settled on her shoulders like a physical burden. She'd spent 7 years keeping him hidden, keeping him safe. Now she had to prepare him for a world that would never fully accept him. Will you help me? She asked quietly. Not as Alpha King, but as someone who understands what it's like to be different? Aldrich's expression softened. Yes, I give you my word. And standing there in the moonlight, looking out over a city that had been built on the ashes of war, Cassia allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. 3 weeks passed in a blur of routine and revelation. Brennan's days filled with lessons control exercises with a moon-blessed trainer named Silas who could manipulate elemental forces, etiquette sessions with counselor Thea, who proved surprisingly patient with a 6-year-old, and combat training with a guard captain named Oren, who taught him that power meant nothing without discipline. Cassia watched her son transform from a shy forest child into something more complex. He still cried when he scraped his knees, still laughed at silly jokes, still needed her to check for monsters under his bed. But increasingly, she also saw flashes of something older in his mismatched eyes, an understanding that childhood was a luxury he couldn't fully afford. It broke her heart even as she encouraged it. Her own days were stranger. As the child's guardian, she had status in the palace, but no clear role. Not kite servant, not kite nobility, not kite anything. She drifted through opulent halls feeling like a ghost, until Aldrich started including her in strategy meetings about the Covenant threat. You spent 7 years surviving in hostile territory, he'd said when she protested she had no strategic expertise. That makes you more qualified than half my advisors. So she sat in planning sessions, listened to intelligence reports, and gradually came to understand the full scope of what they faced. The Covenant wasn't just a group of extremists, they were a network spanning all 7 original Pact territories, with resources, inside information, and a fanaticism that made them unpredictable. And they were getting bolder. Small incidents plagued the palace, a tainted food delivery meant for Brennan, a training accident that nearly killed Silas, mysterious fires in the archives where ancient texts about Convergence children were stored. Each incident was subtle enough to maintain plausible deniability, but the pattern was clear. The Whisperer was here, working from inside. We need to draw them out, Aldrich said one evening, pacing his private study where he'd called an emergency meeting. Present were Cassia, Thea, Fenric, Oren, and a few other trusted advisors. This death by 1,000 cuts strategy is working. They're eroding confidence, making people paranoid, turning wolves against each other. Drawing them out means using bait, Fenric said grimly. And we all know what the best bait would be. Absolutely not. Cassia's voice was steel. You are not using Brennan as bait. I wouldn't suggest it if I saw any other way. Aldrich stopped pacing to face her. But think about it, they want him. As long as they're creeping around the shadows, we're reactive, always one step behind. If we control the encounter, set the terms. You're talking about deliberately putting my son in danger. He's already in danger. Aldrich's composure cracked slightly. At least this way, we choose the time and place. We prepare. We surround him with our best fighters. We use a child as bait, Cassia finished coldly. Dress it up however you want, that's what you're proposing. Actually, Thea interjected carefully, there might be a middle path. The Spring Convergence Festival is in 2 days. It's a public celebration, where all pacts come together, the anniversary of the kingdom's founding. His Majesty always makes an appearance. You want me to parade Brennan in front of the entire city? Cassia looked at her incredulously. I want to make it impossible for the Covenant to act without exposing themselves. Thea's sharp mind was clearly working through possibilities. The festival is the most public event of the year. Hundreds of witnesses, guards, everywhere, complete controlled environment. If the Whisperer tries something during the festival, they'll have to reveal themselves to do it. Oren nodded slowly. It could work. We triple the guard presence, position trusted wolves throughout the crowd, have spotters on every rooftop. The Covenant would have to commit significant resources to make a move in those conditions. And when they do commit those resources, Fenric added, we'll be ready to capture them. Finally get some answers about their organization. Aldrich looked at Cassia. It's your decision. I won't force this. She wanted to refuse. Every protective instinct screamed at her to hide Brennan away, to run back to the forest, to anywhere but a public festival where he'd be exposed to thousands of potential threats. But she thought about the incidents, the poisoning, the fires, the accidents, thought about living in constant paranoia, never knowing when the next attack would come. Thought about Brennan growing up in a prison of protection, never free, never safe. I'll agree on 2 conditions, she said finally. First, I stay with him the entire time. Not guards. Not trainers me. Second, the moment I sense something wrong, we leave. No arguments, no discussions, we leave. Agreed, Aldrich said immediately. The next 2 days were a frenzy of preparation. Cassia barely slept, her mind running through every possible disaster scenario. She taught Brennan emergency signals a specific phrase that meant run, a hand gesture that meant danger. She made him practice until it became reflex. The morning of the festival dawned bright and clear, as if the weather itself mocked her anxiety. Servants dressed Brennan in fine clothes, a small tunic embroidered with both Blackmaw and Iron Ridge symbols, a visible statement of his dual heritage. They wanted to put circlets in his hair, but Cassia refused. He was a child, not a political symbol, regardless of what Aldrich's strategy required. She wore borrowed finery as well, a deep green dress that marked her as part of the royal household. It felt like a costume, playing at being someone she wasn't. You look pretty, Mama, Brennan said, tugging at his own uncomfortable collar. You look handsome, little Ember. She knelt to adjust his tunic. Remember what we practiced? If you say snowflake, I run to Captain Orin. If you do this, he made the hand gesture, I hide my power no matter what. Good boy. She kissed his forehead, breathing in his familiar scent, grounding herself in what mattered. Not politics or prophecies or kingdoms, just this. Her son, alive, safe. The festival sprawled across the city's main plaza, a riot of color and noise. Vendors sold treats, musicians played traditional pack songs, children chased each other through the crowds, while their parents watched indulgently. Banners displaying Aldrich's United Pack sigil flew from every building. When Aldrich appeared on the raised platform with his inner council, a cheer went up. He gave a speech about unity and progress, his voice carrying the natural authority that made wolves of every pack listen. Then he gestured for Cassia and Brennan to join him. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some cheered, curious about the child they'd heard rumors of. Others went silent, watching with calculation or fear. Cassia felt the weight of thousands of eyes as she guided Brennan onto the platform. This is Brennan, Aldrich announced, his hand resting protectively on the child's shoulder. A child of 2 bloodlines, born from what we thought impossible. He represents our future not bound by old divisions, but embracing new possibilities. Pretty words, Cassia thought, but she saw the tension in the crowd, the clusters of wolves whose expressions held only hostility. The ceremony continued. Traditional blessings from pack elders, symbolic offerings to the moon goddess, a renewal of pack bonds. Throughout it all, Brennan stood quietly, his mismatched eyes taking in everything with an intensity that seemed beyond his years. Then came the public greeting where citizens could approach the platform to offer respects to the Alpha King. A line formed. Mostly well-wishers and opportunists, seeking favor. Aldrich greeted each with practiced courtesy, while guards scrutinized everyone who approached. An elderly woman reached the platform, leaning heavily on a cane. She smiled at Brennan with genuine warmth. Such a beautiful child. May I offer him a blessing? Something felt wrong. Cassia couldn't pinpoint what the woman's scent was normal, her posture non-threatening, but instinct screamed danger. That's kind, but... Cassia began. The woman reached out and touched Brennan's forehead. May you find what you're searching for. Brennan gasped. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. Brennan! Cassia caught him as chaos erupted. Guards surrounded them. Aldrich shouted orders, and the elderly woman disappeared into the scattering crowd with impossible speed for someone supposedly frail. He's not breathing, Cassia cried, laying Brennan flat. His skin had turned cold, his lips blue. Somebody help him. Silas pushed through the guards, his hands already glowing with healing magic. It's a sleep curse. Old magic, very powerful. He placed his hands on Brennan's chest, and golden light poured into the child. She must have used a conduit, something she touched him with. The blessing? Oren growled. She wasn't blessing him, she was cursing him. Cassia held Brennan's limp hand, her own hands shaking. Wake up, little Ember. Please wake up. Silas's magic intensified, but nothing happened. It's not working. The curse is too deep. Keyed specifically to him. I can't. Then find someone who can. Aldrich's alpha command made everyone flinch. Get every healer in the city. Send riders to the other packs for their moon blessed. I don't care what it costs, save him. They carried Brennan to the Gezerzan, Palace's healing wing, a flurry of desperate activity. Healers tried everything: herbs, potions, magical rituals, but nothing broke the curse. He lay there, too still, barely breathing, slipping further away with each passing hour. Cassia never left his side. She held his hand, told him stories, begged him to come back. The hours blurred together, afternoon into evening into night. Outside the healing room, she could hear Aldrich interrogating witnesses, sending guards to hunt for the elderly woman, tearing the city apart looking for the Covenant member who'd done this. Near midnight, when most of the healers had given up and left, offering only hollow condolences, Aldrich entered the healing room alone. He looked haggard, his silver eyes haunted with failure. We found her, he said quietly. The woman. She was already dead when we tracked her down poison. The Covenant doesn't leave loose ends. Cassia didn't respond. She just stared at Brennan's pale face, memorizing every feature in case these were the last hours she had with him. Aldrich moved to the opposite side of the bed. There is one option we haven't tried. His voice was careful, something I swore I'd never do again. She looked up. What? A true bond. Alpha to convergence. He held up his hand, and she saw the lunar stone pendant. My moon-blessed gift, truth sensing. It's not just about lies, it's about connection, seeing to the core of what someone is. If I forge a bond with Brennan using the stone as a conduit, I might be able to reach him where the curse has him trapped. Might? It's never been done with a convergence child. The power feedback could kill me, could kill us both. He met her eyes. But it's the only chance he has. Why? The word came out broken. Why would you risk your life for him? Because. Aldrich looked at Brennan's still form. Because I told you I'd protect him. Because he's important to the kingdom. Because. He stopped, struggled with something internal. Then continued quietly. Because I know what it's like to be alone with a power you can't control. To wonder if you're a monster. And because somewhere in the last 3 weeks, I stopped seeing him as a political asset and started seeing him as what he actually is, a child who deserves a chance to grow up. Cassia's vision blurred with tears. Do it. Whatever it takes. Aldrich removed the lunar stone from around his neck. He placed one hand on Brennan's forehead and gripped the stone with the other. If this works, the bond will be permanent. I'll be connected to him in ways that go beyond pack hierarchy. His pain will be my pain, his growth, my responsibility. I understand. One more thing. He looked at her intently. The bond requires an anchor, someone to ground us both if the connection becomes too intense. It has to be someone who loves Brennan unconditionally. It has to be you. She didn't hesitate. She took Aldrich's free hand with one of hers and kept her other hand on Brennan's chest, over his heart. Together then. The lunar stone began to glow. Aldrich closed his eyes and spoke words in the old tongue, the language of the first wolves. The air grew heavy with power, and Cassia felt something build between them, a circuit of energy flowing from Aldrich through the stone, into Brennan, through her, and back to Aldrich. The connection hit her like lightning. Suddenly she was inside Brennan's mind, or he was inside hers, or they were all together in some space that existed between thought and reality. She saw the curse, a dark, twisted thing wrapped around Brennan's consciousness like thorns, pulling him down into endless sleep. But she also saw him fighting it, his convergence power flaring weakly, trying to break free. Hold on, little Ember, she thought desperately. We're coming. Aldrich's presence joined them in that strange mental space, and he was nothing like his controlled exterior. Here, he was pure alpha dominance, a force of will that could move mountains. But tempered by something she hadn't expected, a deep, aching loneliness that echoed her own. "I've got you," his mental voice said, and she couldn't tell if he was talking to Brennan or her or both. "Neither of you are alone anymore." His power crashed into the curse like a tidal wave. The dark thorns shattered under the assault, and Brennan's consciousness surged upward, toward light, toward life. But the backlash was devastating. The curse tried to transfer to Aldrich instead, to take another victim in place of the one it was losing. Cassia felt it happening, and through her own power, the subtle, persistent strength that had kept them alive through 7 years of hiding between the curse and Aldrich. It wasn't much, just an Omega's gift for healing and endurance, but it was enough. The curse broke, dispersing into nothing. They slammed back into their bodies simultaneously. Brennan gasped and opened his eyes, and Cassia sobbed with relief. She gathered him into her arms, holding him so tight he squeaked in protest. "Mama, can't breathe. Sorry. She pulled back just enough to see his face color returning, eyes focusing, alive. "You're okay. You're going to be okay. Dreamed I was drowning," he mumbled, already falling into natural sleep, exhausted but healing. "Then you pulled me out. You, and..." He looked past her to Aldrich, and something shifted in his expression. Recognition. Connection. "Papa?" The word hung in the air like a bell toll. Aldrich looked stunned, his usual composure completely shattered. "I'm not..." "The bond," Silas said from the doorway, where he'd been watching. His expression was odd. "A true alpha bond. I've only read about them in ancient texts." He bound himself to the child as protector, guardian, father in all but blood. "I didn't intend," Aldrich started. "Didn't you?" Cassia asked softly. She saw it clearly now, the threads of connection visible to her Omega senses. Aldrich had bound himself to Brennan with a depth that went beyond duty or politics. He'd claimed the child as pack, as family, as his to protect at any cost. And by extension, he'd bound himself to her as well. She felt it in awareness of his presence, his emotions, his truth. Not invasive, but there, permanent. "What have I done?" Aldrich whispered. "What you had to," she answered. "You saved him." He met her eyes, and she saw fear there beneath the alpha strength. Fear of what he'd just committed to, of the vulnerability he'd created, of the bond that now tied them together in ways none of them fully understood. "Get some rest," he said finally, rising. "All of you. We'll talk about this tomorrow." He left quickly, almost fleeing, and Cassia suspected he needed time to process what the bond meant as much as she did. But as she settled beside Brennan's sleeping form, watching his chest rise and fall with living breath, she felt something she hadn't felt in 7 years. Hope, and maybe, buried beneath fear and uncertainty, and the chaos of their situation, the first fragile threads of something more. The aftermath of the festival incident transformed everything. Within hours, news spread through the city. The Alpha King had forged a true bond with the Convergence child. The political implications were staggering. A true bond was more than protection, it was adoption in the eyes of pack law. Aldrich had essentially declared Brennan his heir, binding the child to the throne itself. The council convened an emergency session at dawn. Cassia was summoned alongside Aldrich, both of them exhausted from the previous night's ordeal. Brennan remained in the healing wing under heavy guard, still recovering but stable. "Have you lost your mind?" Lady Vara's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "A true bond with a Convergence child? Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I saved his life," Aldrich said flatly. He sat on his throne with perfect posture, but Cassia could feel his exhaustion through their new connection. The bond worked both ways. She sensed his emotions like whispers at the edge of her consciousness. "You've tied your life force to a child whose prophesied role is to either unite or destroy us." Lord Fenric slammed his hand on the council table. "If he goes rogue, if the Covenant corrupts him, if his Convergence powers overwhelm him, you'll be dragged down with him. The kingdom loses its king and gains a monster in one catastrophic moment. Then I'll have to ensure that doesn't happen." Aldrich's voice carried absolute certainty. "The bond makes him family. Any attack on him is an attack on the crown itself. Any pack that moves against him declares war on this kingdom. You've painted an even bigger target on all our backs, another council member muttered. Counselor Thea stood, her expression thoughtful. Or perhaps His Majesty has done the only thing that could truly protect the child. The Covenant wanted Brennan because he was vulnerable, unprotected, easy to corrupt or claim. Now he's bonded to the strongest alpha in 7 territories. That changes the calculation significantly. It also reveals desperation, Vara countered. The Alpha King so afraid of losing a child that he bonds himself permanently? It shows weakness. It shows commitment. The words came from Cassia before she could stop herself. Every eye turned to her, and she felt the familiar weight of being judged. But the bond had done something to her too, given her a confidence she'd lacked before. You all sit here debating politics while a child nearly died yesterday. Alpha King Aldrich did what any decent person would do. He saved him. And bound himself in the process, Vara said. Tell me, Omega, did you know what the ritual would do? Did you understand you'd be bound as well? I can smell it on you, the Alpha's mark, faint but present. You're connected now, too. Cassia felt her face flush. She'd noticed that the way Aldrich's scent clung to her now, marking her as pack in ways that went beyond normal hierarchy. I understand enough. Do you? Vera's smile was cold. You've gone from exiled nobody to the Alpha Kings. What exactly? You're not his mate, that bond is different. But you're not just the child's guardian anymore either. You exist in this strange liminal space, neither servant nor nobility, neither pack nor outsider. She's family, Aldrich said, his voice hard. The bond recognizes her as co-guardian. That gives her status in this court, whether you like it or not. Status she's done nothing to earn, Fenric muttered. She kept a convergence child alive for 7 years when every force in the kingdom wanted him dead. If that doesn't earn status, what does? Aldrich's alpha dominance rolled through the chamber, making several council members flinch. This debate is over. The bond is permanent and non-negotiable. The only question is whether you'll support it or fight it. And if we fight it? Vara challenged. Then you're no longer part of my council. The threat was clear and absolute. I don't have time for wolves who can't adapt to new realities. The Covenant is growing bolder, and yesterday proved they have access to powerful magic users. We need unity, not infighting. Thea spoke into the tense silence. Perhaps we should focus on the immediate threat. The woman who cursed Brennan, she wasn't just Covenant. She was moon-blessed, powerful enough to craft a curse that nearly killed him despite his convergence strength. That suggests the Covenant has resources we haven't accounted for. Agreed. Aldrich straightened in his throne. Which is why I'm declaring a state of heightened security. All moon-blessed in the city will be registered and monitored not as prisoners, but as potential targets or infiltrators. The Covenant is clearly recruiting or coercing them. That will be hugely unpopular, Fenric warned. I don't govern by popularity. Aldrich's expression was grim. I govern by necessity. And right now, we're at war whether we want to admit it or not. The council session dragged on for hours, hashing out security protocols and political damage control. By the time Cassia was finally released, she felt wrung out and hollowed. She made her way back to the healing wing, desperate to see Brennan. But she found Aldrich already there, sitting beside the child's bed, watching him sleep. The Alpha King looked different in this moment, not powerful or commanding, just tired and worried. How is he? Cassia asked softly. Healing. Silas says he'll make a full recovery. Aldrich didn't look away from Brennan's face. I keep thinking about what would have happened if the bond hadn't worked. If I'd been too late. But you weren't. She sat on the bed's opposite side, taking Brennan's small hand in hers. You saved him. This time. His silver eyes finally met hers. But the Whisperer is still out there. The Covenant is still plotting. And now that I've bound myself to him, they'll come with everything they have. Because killing Brennan means killing me, and killing me means the kingdom falls apart. Is that what the bond means? Your deaths are linked? Not quite so direct. But our fates are intertwined now. If his convergence powers spiral out of control, they'll pull at me through the bond. If I'm severely injured or weakened, it will affect him. He rubbed his face wearily. Silas explained it all in technical terms I barely understood. The short version is, we're family now, in the most literal magical sense. And me? Cassia asked quietly. Vara was right. I can feel your presence. Sense your emotions sometimes. What does that make me? Aldrich was quiet for a long moment. The bond needed an anchor. Someone who loved Brennan unconditionally, to ground the connection. You are that anchor, but it means you're part of the bond structure. Not as deeply tied as Brennan and I, but connected. Is that why I can feel your exhaustion right now? Your fear? He looked startled. You can feel that? It's faint, but yes. She studied his face, seeing past the alpha mask to the man beneath. You're terrified, you made the wrong choice. Afraid the council is right, and you've doomed the kingdom by binding yourself to him. Get out of my head, he said, but there was no heat in it, just resignation. It's not really your head, more like emotional echoes. She squeezed Brennan's hand gently. For what it's worth, I don't think you made the wrong choice. You made the human choice, the compassionate one. Compassion is a luxury kings can't always afford. Maybe that's exactly what's wrong with kings. That earned her a surprised laugh, short but genuine. You're dangerous, you know that? You say things that would get others thrown in dungeons. What are you going to do, exile me? Been there. She smiled slightly. Besides, the bond means you're stuck with me now. Might as well get used to brutal honesty. Brennan stirred between them, his mismatched eyes fluttering open. Mama? Papa? The words came sleepily, without thought, just innocent recognition of the two people who'd pulled him from darkness. Cassia's breath caught at hearing him call Aldrich Papa again. She glanced at the Alpha King and saw complex emotions flicker across his face, longing, fear, acceptance, all at once. I'm here, little Ember, she said softly. We both are. Hungry. Brennan mumbled. That's a good sign. Aldrich stood quickly, almost gratefully seizing on the practical need. I'll have the kitchen send up something suitable for invalids. Broth, bread, nothing too heavy. He left with more haste than necessary, and Cassia understood. The bond had forced a vulnerability on him that he wasn't prepared for, made him a father when he'd only intended to be a protector, made him care in ways that went beyond political calculation. It would take time for him to adjust. For all of them to adjust. But as she helped Brennan sit up, watched his color returning, and his strength rebuilding, she felt certain of one thing. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Not as king and subject, not as alpha and omega, but as something new. A family forged not by blood, but by choice and sacrifice and bonds that ran deeper than any prophecy. They gave Brennan 1 week to recover before the Covenant struck again. The attack came at dawn, when the palace was at its most vulnerable, guard shifts changing, servants beginning their rounds, the city just stirring to life. Cassia woke to the sound of screams and the acrid smell of smoke. She was out of bed instantly, running to Brennan's adjoining room. He stood at the window, mismatched eyes wide with fear, watching flames engulf the eastern wing of the palace. Mama, what's happening? Get away from the window. She pulled him back, her mind racing. This wasn't a subtle infiltration like before. This was a direct assault. Which meant her door burst open. Not guards, but 3 wolves she'd never seen before, their eyes glowing with the same red corruption she'd seen in the forest rogues. Behind them stood a figure in dark robes, face hidden behind a silver mask. The child, the masked figure said, their voice distorted. Hand him over, and the Omega lives. Cassia shifted partially, claws extending, placing herself between Brennan and the intruders. You'll have to go through me. How tedious. The masked figure gestured, and the corrupted wolves lunged. Cassia fought with the desperation of a mother protecting her young. Her Omega wolf was smaller, weaker, but faster. She ducked under snapping jaws, raked claws across exposed flanks, used furniture as weapons and shields. But 3 against 1, she was being overwhelmed. A corrupted wolf got past her defenses, heading straight for Brennan. She screamed, knowing she couldn't reach him in time. The wolf exploded backward, hitting the wall with bone-crushing force. Brennan stood with his hands raised, his eyes blazing with convergence power. But something was wrong. The power flickered erratically, responding to his fear rather than his control. Bad dogs, he shouted, and another wave of force rippled outward, shattering windows and cracking stone. Stop, Cassia cried. Brennan, you have to control it. But he was too frightened, too young. The power kept building, wild and dangerous. The masked figure laughed behind their disguise. Perfect. The child loses control, destroys part of the palace, maybe kills his beloved mama. What a tragedy. What excellent propaganda for our cause. The door exploded inward. Aldrich charged through in full alpha form, massive, silver-furred, radiating dominance that made even the corrupted wolves hesitate. He took in the situation instantly. Cassia bleeding from multiple wounds, Brennan's power spiraling out of control, the masked intruder orchestrating it all. Brennan, listen to my voice. Aldrich's thoughts came through the bond, calm and steady. You're not alone. We've got you. Let the power flow through us instead of fighting it. Cassia felt it too, the bond activating, creating a circuit for Brennan's wild energy. It poured into her and Aldrich, distributed between them, becoming manageable. The destructive waves stopped, and Brennan collapsed, crying. The masked figure cursed and reached into their robes, pulling out a crystal that glowed with sickly green light. If I can't take him, I'll kill him. Better dead than in your hands. They hurled the crystal. It arcs through the air, radiating death magic, potent enough that Cassia could feel it even from across the room. Aldrich leaped, intercepting it mid-flight. It exploded on contact, and he crashed to the ground, his silver fur smoking. No! Cassia's scream was raw. Through the bond, she felt his pain agonizing, all-consuming. The death magic was burning through him, trying to stop his heart. The masked figure fled, and their corrupted wolves followed. Mission failed, but damage done. Palace guards finally arrived, too late to help, filling the room with confusion. Cassia shifted back to human form and dropped beside Aldrich's fallen body. He'd shifted back too, unconscious, his chest barely moving. Black veins spread from where the crystal had struck him, death magic poisoning his system. Get healers, she screamed at the guards. Now! Silas arrived within minutes, his hands already glowing with healing light. But when he placed them on Aldrich's chest, he jerked back with a curse. It's dark magic, old and powerful. It's fighting my healing, trying to spread. Then fight harder. Cassia grabbed Aldrich's hand, and through the bond, she could feel him slipping away. The connection that had saved Brennan was now showing her Aldrich's death in real time. Mama, is Papa dying? Brennan's small voice cut through the prison anonymity. All, chaos. He stood there covered in dust and tears, looking far too young to be dealing with this. No, she said fiercely. No, he's not, because we're not going to let him. She looked at Silas. The bond. Can we use it like we did during the curse? Pull him back? That's incredibly dangerous. The death magic could spread to you, to the child. I don't care. She pulled Brennan close with her free hand. Tell me what to do. What followed was hours of agony. Silas guided them through a healing ritual that used the bond as a lifeline. Cassia and Brennan poured their energy into Aldrich, fighting the death magic inch by inch. Every moment felt like drowning, the corruption trying to use their connection to spread to them as well. But Cassia was an Omega who'd survived 7 years in hostile wilderness, and Brennan was a convergence child with power beyond understanding. Together, they were stubborn enough to drag their alpha back from death's door. When Aldrich finally gasped and opened his silver eyes, Cassia collapsed beside him, utterly spent. Brennan was already asleep, slumped against her side. The three of them lay there in a tangle of exhaustion and relief, while Silas worked to heal the less critical wounds. You saved me, Aldrich rasped. You saved us first, Cassia whispered. That's what family does. He closed his eyes, and through the bond, she felt his overwhelming gratitude mixed with something deeper, something that made her heart race despite her exhaustion. Outside the healing room, she could hear the palace and chaos guards hunting for infiltrators, servants putting out fires, nobles demanding answers. The Covenant had struck at the heart of the kingdom and nearly succeeded in killing its king. The real war had begun. And somewhere in the shadows, the masked figure who'd orchestrated the attack was already planning their next move. Aldrich's recovery took 3 days, but the political fallout was immediate and devastating. The attack had exposed vulnerabilities in the palace's defenses. Worse, investigations revealed that the infiltrators had help from inside. Someone had deliberately weakened wards, altered guard schedules, and provided intelligence about the royal wing's layout. The Whisperer had been busy. On the fourth day, Aldrich called a full assembly. Every noble, every pack representative, every major figure in the kingdom was summoned to the grand hall. Cassia stood beside the throne with Brennan, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on them. "The Covenant of the First Moon has declared war on this kingdom," Aldrich announced, his voice carrying to every corner. "They attacked the palace. They nearly killed me. And they did it with inside help." He let that sink in. "Which means we have traitors among us." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Cassia watched faces, trying to identify who looked guilty versus merely afraid. "I know some of you question my decision to protect the Convergence child," Aldrich continued. "You think he's more trouble than he's worth? That the kingdom would be safer if we simply handed him over to the Covenant or eliminated him ourselves?" Lady Vera stood. "Your Majesty, with respect, that's not an unfair assessment. Since the child arrived, we've had poisonings, attacks, fires. The Covenant has turned this city into a war zone trying to claim him. Perhaps it's time to ask the hard question: is one child worth the stability of the entire kingdom?" "No," Aldrich said flatly. "He's not worth it. He's worth more." Shocked silence. "The child's name is Brennan," Aldrich said. "He likes pine cones and honey bread. He has nightmares about drowning. He laughs at terrible jokes and cries when he scrapes his knees. He's 6 years old, and he's my son by bond if not by blood." His silver eyes swept the assembly. "And if you think I'm going to sacrifice him to buy peace with extremists who want to drag us back into endless war, then you don't know me at all. But the attacks," someone started, "will continue regardless." Aldrich's voice hardened. "Do you really think the Covenant will stop if we give them Brennan? They don't want the child, they want what he represents. Proof that change is possible, that the old divisions can be overcome. They want him dead, not because he's dangerous, but because he's hope." Lord Fenric rose slowly. "You speak with passion, Your Majesty. But passion doesn't change tactical reality. We are at war with an enemy that can strike from within our own walls. That has Moon-blessed powerful enough to breach our defenses. That," he paused significantly, "has the resources to keep attacking until we break. We need to think strategically, not emotionally." "Then let's talk strategy," Aldrich said coldly. "The Covenant's strength comes from secrecy. They hide, manipulate, operate from the shadows. But what if we remove their ability to hide?" Counselor Thea stepped forward with a wooden box. She opened it, to reveal dozens of small stones, each glowing faintly. "Lunar stones. His Majesty has been searching for them for years, collecting fragments from old battle sites and ruins. Together, they create a detection network powerful enough to identify anyone using corrupted magic within the city. We're going to activate this network in 3 days," Aldrich announced. "Everyone in Silver Peak will pass through checkpoints where the stones will be tested. Anyone who triggers a corruption response will be detained for questioning." "That's hundreds of thousands of people," Vara protested. "It will take weeks, maybe months. Then we'd better start immediately." Aldrich's tone brooked no argument. "The alternative is continuing to live with enemies hidden among us." A disturbance at the hall's entrance cut off further debate. Guards dragged in a struggling figure, a woman Cassia recognized with a chill. "Morel, the healer who'd tried to poison Brennan on their journey to the capital. We found her trying to flee the city," a guard captain reported. "She matches the description of the Whisperer." Morel stopped struggling and smiled. "Oh, good. I'm tired of pretending anyway." Her voice changed, gaining that multiple tone quality Cassia had heard from corrupted beings before. "You think your little stones will save you, Alpha King? You think detection will stop us?" "It's a start," Aldrich said. "Then let me give you something better." Morel's eyes glowed red. "A choice, the child for the city. Deliver Brennan to the Covenant within 7 days, or we unleash everything we have. Every infiltrator, every corrupted wolf, every dark ritual we've been preparing. We will burn Silver Peak to the ground and everyone in it." "You're bluffing," Thea said. "Am I?" Morel's smile widened. "Test me. Keep the child, and in 7 days, watch your precious city die." She looked directly at Cassia. "Or give us what we want. One child's life for thousands. That's the Omega way, isn't it? Sacrifice yourself for the pack?" Cassia felt Brennan's hand tighten on hers. Through the bond, she sensed his fear not for himself, but for her. He was already thinking about how to protect her, even if it meant giving himself up. No, she said firmly, squeezing back. Absolutely not. Mama, no. She looked at Aldrich, then at the assembly. I know what she's trying to do, make us think we have to choose between Brennan and the city. But that's a false choice. The Covenant doesn't want peace, they want chaos. They want us divided, afraid, willing to sacrifice our principles to feel safe. Pretty speech, Morel mocked. But empty. In 7 days, people will die because you're too selfish to give up one child. In 7 days, we'll be ready, Aldrich said. Guards, take her to the secure cells, separate from other prisoners, constant watch, no visitors. As Morel was dragged away, still laughing, the assembly erupted into arguments. Some supported Aldrich's defiance. Others insisted they should consider the Covenant's demands. The kingdom was fracturing before their eyes, exactly as the enemy wanted. Aldrich raised his hand for silence. I'm not asking for a vote. I'm telling you what we're going to do. We activate the detection network. We root out every Covenant infiltrator. We fortify our defenses. And we protect Brennan, because the moment we start sacrificing children to appease terrorists, we've already lost everything worth fighting for. And if they make good on their threat? Fenric demanded. If the city burns? Then it burns while we defend it, together. Aldrich's voice rang with absolute certainty. That's my decision as your Alpha King. Those who can't support it should leave now. No one moved. Whether from loyalty or fear or sheer momentum, the assembly held. But Cassia could see it in their faces, the doubt, the fear, the calculation. The Covenant had planted seeds of discord that would keep growing. 7 days wasn't much time to prepare for a war that might destroy everything. That night, unable to sleep, Cassia found herself on the palace's highest balcony, looking out over Silver Peak. The city glowed with lamplight, peaceful and beautiful, unaware of the deadline counting down. You should be resting. Aldrich's voice came from behind her. He joined her at the railing, both of them silent for a moment. I keep thinking about what Morel said, Cassia admitted. About the Omega Way. Sacrifice for the pack. And I wonder if she's right. If I'm being selfish, keeping Brennan when his life could buy peace. It wouldn't buy peace, just a temporary pause before the Covenant makes new demands. Aldrich's hand covered hers on the railing. You know that. Logically, yes, but emotionally. She struggled to find words. I'm terrified, Aldrich. Not of dying, but of being responsible for others' deaths. If the Covenant attacks and people die protecting Brennan, how do I live with that? The same way I live with every decision that costs lives, by remembering what we're fighting for. He turned to face her. The kingdom I'm building isn't perfect. It's messy and compromised and held together by hope and determination, but it's better than what came before. Better than endless war. Better than a world where children are killed for being born different. And if we lose? Then we lose trying to do the right thing. That has to count for something. His silver eyes held hers. Cassia, I need you to hear this. Whatever happens in 7 days, it's not your fault. It's not Brennan's fault. It's the Covenant's choice to wage war, not ours. She wanted to believe that. But the weight of potential lives lost sat heavy on her chest. There's something else, Aldrich said quietly. Something I should have told you before, but the timing never felt right. He pulled out a document from his jacket. It's an official adoption decree. Making Brennan my legal heir, with all rights and protections that entails. I had the scribes draw it up after the bond, but I wanted your permission before filing it. Cassia took the document with shaking hands. It was all there in formal legal language. Brennan claimed as crown prince, with Cassia named as his guardian mother, both elevated to royal status. This changes everything, she whispered. I know, that's why I'm asking, not telling. His expression was vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. I'm asking you to trust me with him, to let me be his father, not just in magic but in law, to stay here and help me raise him, help me build this kingdom into something he can be proud of. And if the Covenant wins, if they kill us all, then at least he'll die as a prince instead of a hunted child. At least we'll have tried. Aldrich's hand cupped her cheek gently. I can't promise safety. I can't promise easy. but I can promise I'll fight for him for both of you with everything I have. Cassia looked at this impossible alpha who'd bound himself to her son, who'd faced death for them, who was offering not just protection but family. 7 days. 7 days until everything either came together or fell apart. Yes, she said, I trust you. His relief was palpable through the bond. He pulled her into an embrace that felt like coming home, and they stood there in the moonlight, drawing strength from each other for the battle ahead. 7 days. The countdown had begun. The first 3 days were a blur of frantic preparation. The Lunar Stone Detection Network went live at every city entrance, creating checkpoints where wolves were screened for corruption. It caught 17 Covenant infiltrators in the first day alone, far more than anyone had expected. The city was riddled with traitors. Aldrich had them interrogated thoroughly. Some broke, providing information about Covenant cells and planned attacks. Others died before they could talk. Poison capsules hidden in their teeth. But each captured infiltrator was one less enemy walking their streets. Meanwhile, Captain Oren trained the palace guard in anti-corruption protocols. Silas worked with other Moonblessed to create protective wards. Thea organized civilian evacuation plans for vulnerable populations. Everyone had a role to play, except Cassia. She wasn't a fighter, wasn't a strategist, wasn't politically connected. She was just an Omega mother trying to keep her sons safe while the world prepared for war around them. She felt useless, helpless, watching others take action while she could only wait. On the 4th day, Brennan found her crying in their quarters. Mama, why sad? He climbed into her lap, his small hands wiping her tears. I'm scared, little Ember. Scared I can't protect you. Scared I'm not strong enough for what's coming. But Papa will help. Such simple faith in his child's voice. And you're strong. You kept me safe for forever. 7 years, not forever. Felt like forever. He pressed his forehead against hers, and she felt a pulse of warmth, his convergence power, gentle and controlled for once. I'm scared too. But we're together. That makes us strong. Out of the mouths of babes. That evening, Silas requested a private meeting. He brought scrolls covered in complex diagrams that meant nothing to Cassia. I've been researching the bond, he said, spreading the scrolls across their table. Specifically, what happens when a true alpha bond connects not just to a convergence child, but through an omega anchor. What did you find? Aldrich asked, leaning over the diagrams. A theory, nothing more. Silas pointed to intersecting circles. True bonds create power flow between connected individuals. But typically that's just 2 people, alpha and child. You have 3, alpha, child, and omega anchor. That creates a triangle, and triangles are notoriously stable structures. Get to the point, Aldrich said impatiently. The point is that your bond might be capable of something unprecedented. If all 3 of you worked in perfect synchronization, you could theoretically create a feedback loop. Brennan's raw convergence power, channeled through Aldrich's alpha dominance and stabilized by Cassia's omega grounding. The result would be... He trailed off, looking uncertain. Would be what? Cassia pressed. A fusion state, temporary merging of consciousness and power. You'd essentially become one entity with combined abilities. Silas met their eyes seriously. It's never been documented. The ancient texts mention it as theoretical possibility, but there's no record of anyone actually achieving it. And if we tried? Aldrich asked. You might burn out the bond completely, severing it permanently, and possibly killing Brennan in the process. Or you might transcend individual limitations and become something that could face the Covenant on equal footing. Silas rolled up the scrolls. It's a catastrophic risk with potentially infinite reward. So we'd be gambling Brennan's life on a theory, Cassia said flatly. Yes, which is why I'm only presenting it as information, not recommendation. Silas stood to leave. But if the Covenant's attack is as overwhelming as Morel suggested, we might need every advantage we can get. Even the insane ones. After he left, Cassia and Aldrich sat in heavy silence. We're not doing it, Cassia said finally. I won't risk Brennan on a theory. Even if it's our only chance? Aldrich looked at her. If the Covenant comes with everything they have, corrupted wolves, dark magic users, Moonblessed turned to their cause, conventional defense might not be enough. Then we find another way. What other way? His frustration leaked through the bond. I'm open to suggestions, Cassia. Really. Because I'm terrified that when the attack comes, I won't be strong enough to protect you both. That I'll have to watch you die because I wasn't willing to take the necessary risks. She heard the fear beneath his words, the weight of responsibility crushing him. Through the bond, she felt his certainty that he would fail, that he wasn't enough. You're not alone in this, she said softly, taking his hand. Whatever comes, we face it together. Maybe that's enough. Maybe. But he didn't sound convinced. The 6th day dawned with ominous signs. Birds fled the city. Animals in the stables grew restless. The air itself felt heavy, like a storm building. The Covenant was preparing their assault. That evening, as the sun set blood-red over Silver Peak, Aldrich called his inner circle together. Cassia, Thea, Fenric, Orin, Silas, and a few other trusted advisors gathered in the war room. Intelligence suggests the attack begins at midnight, Orin reported, pointing at a map. They'll strike from multiple points, simultaneously North Gate, East Wall, underground tunnels we didn't even know existed. It's designed to overwhelm our defenses through sheer chaos. How many are we facing? Thea asked. Hundreds, maybe more? Orin's expression was grim. Every corrupted wolf they've been building, every infiltrator we didn't catch, every extremist who believes in their cause. It's an army. We have an army too, Fenric said. Every able-bodied wolf in the city has volunteered to fight. We're not helpless. No, but we're outmatched in terms of dark magic capabilities. Silas gestured at his own reports. They have at least 3 corrupted Moonblessed leading the assault. I can counter 1, maybe 2. But 3? With all their supporting forces? It's going to be brutal. Aldrich's jaw tightened. Recommendations? Evacuate the royal family, Thea said immediately. Get Brennan and Cassia out of the city, remove the target, and maybe the Covenant pulls back. They won't, Cassia said quietly. This isn't about Brennan anymore. It's about destroying everything you've built. He's just the excuse. Silence greeted that truth. Then we make our stand, Aldrich said finally. Position our strongest fighters at the key breach points. Silas, you and the other Moonblessed focus on countering their magic users. Orin, coordinate the guard and volunteer forces. Fenric, manage the evacuation of civilians to the inner palace where wards are strongest. And you, Your Majesty? Thea asked. I'll be where I'm most needed. His silver eyes glinted. Wherever the fighting is thickest. They dispersed to their assignments. Cassia found herself alone with Aldrich and Brennan in the royal quarters, the 3 of them facing down their last few hours of peace. I should try to sleep, Brennan said, though his eyes were wide with fear. So I'm strong for tomorrow. Good idea, little Ember. Cassia tucked him into bed, kissing his forehead. Whatever happens, remember that we love you, both of us. I know. He looked between them. Are we gonna die? The question hung in the air, too honest to deflect. Maybe, Aldrich said, coming to sit on the bed's edge. I won't lie to you, Brennan. Tomorrow is going to be dangerous, but we're going to fight with everything we have. And even if the worst happens, you gave us something precious. Time together as a family. That matters. Brennan nodded solemnly, processing this with the strange maturity he sometimes showed. If I use all my power, I could help, make us win. No, Cassia said immediately. You're 6 years old, it's not your job to save us. But I'm Convergence. That's what I'm for, right? To unite or destroy. His mismatched eyes shimmered with tears. Maybe I'm supposed to destroy the bad wolves. Or maybe you're supposed to grow up and become whoever you want to be, Aldrich said gently. Not a weapon, not a prophecy. Just Brennan. After he finally drifted to sleep, Cassia and Aldrich remained sitting on opposite sides of the bed, watching him breathe. Silas's theory, Aldrich said quietly. The fusion state. No. Hear me out. He looked at her across their son's sleeping form. Not as a first resort, but if things go catastrophically wrong, if we're losing and there's no other option. You want permission to risk his life as a last resort. I want us to agree that if it comes down to him dying anyway, in the Covenant's hands versus trying something that might save him, we take the chance. His voice was raw. I can't watch him be taken, Cassia. I can't. She understood the desperation, felt it mirrored in her own chest. But making that choice, agreeing to potentially burn out the bond and kill him themselves. Only if there's no other option, she said finally. Only if we're already lost. Agreed. They spent the remaining hours in preparation, checking weapons, reviewing plans, saying goodbyes they hoped wouldn't be final. And when midnight came, they stood together on the palace walls, watching the Covenant army emerge from darkness like a nightmare made flesh. Hundreds of corrupted wolves, their eyes glowing red, moving in perfect synchronization. Behind them, figures in dark robes that could only be corrupted moon-blessed. And at the center, riding a massive wolf that looked more demon than animal, was a figure in elaborate armor. The Covenant's true leader, Aldrich breathed. They've been hiding all along. The armored figure removed their helmet, revealing a face Cassia recognized with cold shock. Lady Vera. Hello, Your Majesty. Vara's voice carried across the distance, amplified by magic. Surprised? You shouldn't be. I've been planning this for years, just waiting for the right moment. Thank you for providing the perfect catalyst by binding yourself to the Convergence child. You were on my council, Aldrich said, his alpha command making the words thunder. You swore oaths of loyalty. I swore to preserve our kind from threats. You became that threat the moment you chose change over tradition. Vara smiled coldly. Last chance. Send out the child. And? We'll make his death quick. Keep him, and everyone you love dies slowly. Aldrich's response was to shift fully into his alpha form and howl a challenge that echoed across the city. Around him, hundreds of loyal wolves howled back, ready to defend their king and kingdom. The Covenant army charged. And the battle for Silver Peak began. The fighting was brutal, chaotic, exactly as savage as Cassia had feared. She'd left Brennan in the most protected chamber of the palace, guarded by Orin and 20 of the most trusted soldiers. Then she'd done something that surprised even herself. She'd picked up a weapon and joined the defense, not the front lines. She wasn't suicidal, but the palace walls, where corrupted wolves were trying to breach. Where her Omega speed and agility could make a difference. She fought alongside guards and volunteers, all of them desperately holding their positions while the real powers clashed below. Aldrich was magnificent in his fury. His alpha form tore through corrupted wolves like paper, his dominance so overwhelming that some enemies simply fled rather than face him. But there were so many, and he couldn't be everywhere at once. Silas dueled one of the corrupted moon-blessed, light and darkness clashing in explosions that shook buildings. Two other corrupted moon-blessed wreaked havoc elsewhere in the city, one controlling fire, the other turning the ground itself into weapons. And Vara commanded it all, directing forces with military precision, exploiting every weakness in their defense. By hour 2, they were losing. Casualties mounted, the North Gate fell, fires spread through multiple districts. The volunteer forces that had seemed so numerous were being overwhelmed by the Covenant's corrupted army. Cassia felt it through the bond Aldrich's growing desperation as he realized they couldn't hold. She saw it in the faces of defenders around her, hope dying as they understood they were going to lose. Then Brennan's scream cut through the chaos. She knew that scream, knew what it meant. Terror so profound it bypassed conscious thought and triggered pure convergence response. She abandoned her position and ran, taking stairs 3 at a time, following the bond that pulled her toward her son. She burst into his chamber to find Carnage guards dead or dying, and standing over Brennan with a blade raised was someone wearing Orin's face. The Whisperer, the real one. They'd been disguised as the guard captain all along. Step away from my son, Cassia snarled. The Whisperer smiled with Orin's face. Or what, Omega? You'll die valiantly? How touching. They pressed the blade against Brennan's throat. The boy comes with me, or he dies here. Choose. Through the bond, Cassia felt Aldrich racing toward them, but he was too far away. Felt Brennan's terror and pain. Felt the moment crystallizing into impossible choice. She remembered Silas's theory. The fusion state. The catastrophic risk. Aldrich. She thought desperately through the bond. I need you, now, together. She felt his understanding, his horror, his immediate agreement. Through the bond, power began to flow not just between 2 points, but 3. Triangular, stable, building. What are you doing? The Whisperer's eyes widened as they sensed the power building. Something stupid, Cassia said. She grabbed Brennan, pulling him against her even as the blade cut her shoulder. Through the blood and pain, she held on, completing the circuit. Now. Aldrich crashed through the door in human form, tackling the Whisperer away from them. In that split second, all 3 of their minds merged. The fusion hit like lightning. Cassia felt herself dissolving, expanding, becoming more. She was still herself, but also Aldrich's strength and certainty, also Brennan's raw power and innocence. 3 minds, 3 souls, 3 sets of abilities all flowing together into something unprecedented. They stood as one being with 3 bodies, a collective consciousness that saw through all their eyes simultaneously, thought with all their minds at once. Brennan's convergence power flowed through Aldrich's alpha dominance and stabilized through Cassia's omega grounding, creating a perfect circuit of balanced energy. The Whisperer scrambled backward. Impossible. The text said fusion would kill you. We are not bound by what texts say. 3 voices spoke in perfect harmony. We are family. They moved as one. Brennan's power surged outward in controlled waves instead of chaotic bursts. Aldrich's alpha dominance shaped it into precise strikes. Cassia's omega nature prevented it from consuming them. The Whisperer tried to flee, tried to shift, tried to manipulate their minds, but the fusion consciousness saw through every deception, countered every move. In moments, the Whisperer lay defeated, their disguise failing to reveal a wolf Cassia didn't recognize. But there was no time to interrogate. Through their shared awareness, they felt the battle outside turning catastrophic. The city, Brennan's thoughts echoed through their merged mind. We have to save everyone. Together, Aldrich's certainty added. We end this now. They moved through the palace as one entity in 3 bodies, perfectly synchronized. Guards and servants pressed against walls in awe and terror as they passed the Alpha King, the Omega Guardian, and the Convergence Child moving in impossible unison, power radiating from them like visible light. They emerged onto the main battlefield, where Vara was moments away from killing Fenric. The corrupted moon blessed had cornered Silas. Fires raged unchecked. The city was dying. The fusion consciousness raised all 6 of their hands as one, and spoke with 3 voices that shook the foundations of reality. Enough. The word carried weight beyond sound. Alpha command, Omega compassion, and convergence power, all woven together. It rippled outward in concentric waves that touched every wolf in the city, friend and foe alike. The corrupted wolves froze mid-attack. The red glow faded from their eyes, as the dark magic compelling them shattered like glass. They collapsed, suddenly freed from the corruption that had enslaved them. The corrupted moon blessed screamed, as the fusion consciousness reached into them and pulled, not destroying them, but extracting the corruption like poison from a wound. They fell unconscious but alive, finally free of the darkness that had twisted them. Vara alone remained standing, protected by her armor's enchantments. What are you? She breathed. The fusion consciousness regarded her with 3 sets of eyes, silver, mismatched, and omega brown. We are what you feared most. Unity. Balance. Proof that your old ways are obsolete. You're an abomination, Vara screamed. This isn't natural. This isn't... Natural changes, they said simply. We are evolution. We are the future you tried to destroy. They didn't kill her. Instead, they reached out with their joined power and did something far more devastating. They made her feel what they felt. The bond between them, the love and trust and sacrifice. The memories of 7 years in hiding, of choosing compassion over cruelty, of building family from broken pieces. They made her understand that everything she'd fought for, the old divisions, the ancient hatreds, the rigid hierarchies, were just fear dressed up as tradition. Vara collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face, finally seeing what she'd been too blind to recognize. What have I done? She whispered. What have we all done? The fusion consciousness began to separate. It was agony, like being torn apart after experiencing perfect wholeness. But they couldn't maintain it indefinitely. The strain was already burning through the bond, threatening permanent damage. They split back into three separate beings and collapsed together in exhaustion. Cassia found herself on her knees, gasping, with Brennan in her arms and Aldrich's hand gripping hers like a lifeline. Through their individual eyes now, they saw the aftermath. The battle was over. The corrupted wolves were freed and confused but alive. The Moonblessed were unconscious but healing. The Covenant forces, those not enslaved by corruption, had surrendered or fled when they saw their leaders defeated. Vara knelt where they'd left her, broken not by violence but by forced empathy. "Did we win?" Brennan asked in his small, tired voice. "Yes, little Ember," Cassia whispered. "We won. But at what cost?" She could feel it in the bond, permanent changes from the fusion. They would never be quite separate again, never fully individual. Part of each of them would always exist in the others. Aldrich pulled them both into an embrace. "Whatever we've become," he said hoarsely, "we're still us, still family." Around them, the city began to stir. Defenders realizing they'd survived. Civilians emerging from shelter. Wolves of every pack looking at the trio at the center of the miracle, with expressions ranging from awe to fear to hope. Counselor Thea was the first to approach, limping but alive. "Your Majesty, the casualties are significant but far less than expected. The healers are overwhelmed, but we're managing. And the Covenant forces, those still conscious, are requesting terms of surrender." "Accept them," Aldrich said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "No executions. They were manipulated, corrupted, used. We rehabilitate, not destroy." "Even Vara?" He looked at the broken woman still kneeling in the rubble. "Especially Vara. She has to live with what she's done. Death would be mercy she doesn't deserve." The sun rose over Silver Peak, painting the smoke-stained sky in shades of gold and pink. The city was battered but standing, broken but alive, changed forever by the night's events. 3 months later, the throne room had been rebuilt, larger than before, with space for representatives from all the territories. Today, it held hundreds pack leaders, Moonblessed, Omegas, Betas, Alphas, all gathered for the historic moment. Cassia stood beside Aldrich's throne, wearing the formal robes of a recognized consort. Not his mate, that bond was different, and neither of them had pursued it. But his partner, in raising Brennan, in ruling the kingdom, in building something new from the ashes of the old. Brennan stood on his other side, dressed in the circlet and tunic of a crown prince. 7 years old now, his birthday having passed quietly during the reconstruction. Growing fast, his convergence powers slowly coming under control with Silas's patient teaching. He would never be a normal child, but he was loved. Protected. Given a chance to discover who he wanted to become. "Today marks a new chapter," Aldrich announced to the assembly. "For too long, we've structured our society on strict hierarchies, alpha over beta, beta over omega, bloodline over character. The events of 3 months ago proved those structures are obsolete. It's time for real change." He gestured to Thea, who stepped forward with a document. "The Reformation Accords. They establish new laws for our kingdom. No wolf may be exiled for infertility or any perceived defect. Moonblessed children will be protected and trained, not feared and destroyed. Convergence, children should any others emerge, will be granted full citizenship and rights. And most importantly, position in society will be earned through merit and character, not determined solely by birth status." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some approving, some skeptical, some openly hostile. Lord Fenric, who'd survived the battle and returned to the council with new perspective, stood. "Your Majesty, these reforms are radical. How do we implement them without destabilizing the entire social order?" "Carefully," Aldrich said. "Gradually. With input from wolves of every status. This isn't a decree from on high, it's an invitation to build something better together." A young Omega in the crowd raised her hand tentatively. "What about those of us already exiled? Already cast out?" Cassia stepped forward, speaking for the first time. "Pardons have been issued for all Omegas exiled for reasons now considered unjust. You're invited to return, to reclaim your place in society, and for those who prefer their new lives, that choice is respected too." The assembly erupted in discussion. It would take hours to address every concern, every question, every fear, but that was democracy, messy, complicated, necessary. Later, after the formal session ended, and the crowds dispersed, Cassia found herself on the palace balcony again. The city below was healing, new buildings rising where fire had destroyed old ones, wolves of different packs working side by side in reconstruction efforts, children playing in streets without fear. "Copper for your thoughts," Aldrich said, joining her with 2 cups of wine. "Just thinking how far we've come. A year ago, I was hiding in the woods, terrified of being discovered. Now I'm helping write laws that will reshape our entire society." She accepted the wine with a smile. "It's surreal. You've earned this. Earned respect. Earned position." He clinked his cup against hers. "And Brennan? Making friends with some of the children in the city. Silas says his training is progressing well. He's learning control." She paused. "Do you ever regret it? The bond, the fusion, everything we've become?" "Every day," Aldrich admitted. "Not because I wish it hadn't happened, but because of how much it cost. The wolves we lost in the battle, the permanent changes to our bond, the way I can never fully separate my thoughts from yours and Brennan's anymore." "But?" She heard the unspoken word. "But I wouldn't change it. Because the alternative was losing you both. Losing the kingdom. Losing hope itself." His silver eyes met hers. "We're building something unprecedented here, Cassia. A society where Brennan can grow up free. Where other outcasts can find home. Where being different isn't a death sentence. And if we fail? Then we fail trying to do the right thing." He echoed his words from months ago. "That has to count for something." Brennan burst onto the balcony, his mismatched eyes bright with excitement. "Mama, Papa, Silas says I can try advanced training tomorrow. And I made a new friend. Her name is Alara, and she's Omega, but she can do this cool thing with plants and—" "Breathe, little Ember," Cassia laughed, pulling him into a hug. "Tell us everything, but slowly." As Brennan launched into an excited explanation of his day, Cassia caught Aldrich's eye over their son's head. They shared a look of perfect understanding. This was what they'd fought for. Not grand destinies or prophecies or political power. Just this. A child excited about his day, telling his parents about new friends and tomorrow's lessons, growing up, safe and loved in a world that was slowly learning to accept difference instead of destroy it. The reformation would take years, maybe generations. There would be setbacks, resistance, failures. Vara was in secured rehabilitation, undergoing treatment for the trauma that had led her down such a dark path. Other Covenant remnants still lurked in shadows, though greatly weakened. The corrupted wolves freed from dark magic were slowly reintegrating into society, many of them traumatized by what they'd been forced to do. But for the first time in their long, violent history, wolfkind was trying to be better. Trying to evolve beyond ancient hatreds. Trying to build something where children like Brennan could exist without fear. And at the center of it all stood an exiled Omega who'd refused to abandon a child, an Alpha King who'd chosen compassion over tradition, and a Convergence child who'd proven that unity was stronger than division. They were family not by blood, not by traditional bonds, but by choice, by sacrifice, by love that had transformed them into something more than they'd been separately. The prophecy had said the Convergence child would either unite or destroy wolfkind. What it hadn't predicted was that he would do both, destroying the old, broken systems while uniting those brave enough to build something new. As the sun set over Silver Peak, painting the sky in brilliant colors, the 3 of them stood together on the balcony. 3 separate beings, who would always carry pieces of each other. 3 souls who'd learned that true strength came not from individual power, but from connection. Sometimes, the most dangerous place to hide was in plain sight. But sometimes, the most revolutionary act was refusing to hide at all, standing in the light, claiming your truth, and inviting others to join you in building a better world. That was their story. Not perfect, not finished, but theirs. And it was enough.